All right, let's just dive right in. I mean, you can feel it, right? We're living in an era that feels, well, unstable. It seems like our leaders are often just performing instead of actually governing, and being cynical feels like the only sane response sometimes. So, to really understand where we are, and more importantly, where we could go from here, we need a really clear diagnosis of our time. The Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci wrote this from inside a fascist prison almost 100 years ago. But wow, does it feel urgent today? It just perfectly captures that feeling of being caught in between, this sense of real danger, but also, just maybe, a sense of possibility. This is our starting point. So, what's really at the heart of the problem? According to the historian Rutger Bregman, and his work is what we're really digging into today, it's a crisis of leadership and a crisis of virtue. It's not that we lack talent or wealth, no. It's something much, much deeper than that. He gives this phenomenon an incredible name, the survival of the shameless. And the idea is really simple but powerful. The immorality and, frankly, the unseriousness we see in our leaders aren't just bugs in the system. They are the logical result of a system that actively rewards the most brazen people, not the most virtuous or the most capable. Bregman paints this really vivid picture of two kinds of decline happening at once. He says America's decline is like the fall of Rome. It's spectacular, it's vulgar, it's an empire just corroding from the inside out. Europe, on the other hand, is like the death of Venice, a slow, quiet, almost silent sinking into irrelevance, becoming this beautiful open-air museum of what it used to be. No, a huge piece of this decline is this massive, tragic waste of human potential. Bregman calls it the Bermuda Triangle of Talent. And what is it? It's consultancy, finance, and corporate law. He sees it as this black hole that just sucks in our best and brightest minds, often into jobs that are socially kind of meaningless, creating very little of real value, while the world's actual problems are just starved for that exact same talent. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. The numbers are pretty stark. Something like 40% of Harvard graduates end up in this Bermuda Triangle. And if you throw in big tech, that number jumps to over 60%. It really brings to mind what one former Facebook employee said: "The best minds of my generation are thinking about how to make people click ads." Wow. So where did this come from? Well, you can actually see the shift in our culture over time. Back in the 1960s, a huge survey of American freshmen showed their number one goal in life was developing a meaningful philosophy of life. And today, it's getting rich. They're just reflecting the values that we as a society have been feeding them. Okay, so this is all pretty bleak, right? It really brings us to a critical question. If the systems we've built are producing these results and our leaders are trapped inside them, how in the world do we break the cycle? Is there any real hope for meaningful change? But here's the thing. The answer is a resounding yes. The past isn't just some graveyard of forgotten empires and failed ideas. It's also this incredible reservoir of hope. History is absolutely full of stories about small, totally dedicated groups of people who changed the world against impossible odds. Let's start with one of the most brilliant examples in history, the British abolitionists. So picture this. It's 1787. 12 guys get together in a little print shop in London. And their mission? It sounded completely absurd: to overthrow one of the oldest, most profitable economic systems in the entire world. It was basically the first great political movement for the rights of other people in all of human history. Now, and this is so important, this was not an overnight success story, not even close. You can see on the timeline it took decades of relentless campaigning and persistence. The key lesson here is that real moral revolutions demand extraordinary patience. The fight was incredibly long, but in the end, they bent the arc of history. All right, here's another story for you, and this one is just wonderfully weird. The Fabian Society, which fundamentally reshaped modern Britain, started with a failed ghost hunt. Seriously. A few friends tried to summon spirits in a haunted house, got bored, and started talking about how to fix society instead. It's just such a great reminder that world-changing ideas can have the strangest, most humble beginnings. But what's so fascinating is that the Fabians had this incredibly clever, almost modern-feeling strategy. First, they formed a small group of really sharp thinkers. Then, they published this bold, radical vision for the future. Third, and this is key, they mastered the art of marketing, of making their ideas fashionable and cool. And finally, they began what they called a patient, long march through the institutions, slowly, step by step, turning their fringe ideas into mainstream policy. So when you boil it all down, what's the big lesson from these movements? It's that real change, the kind that actually lasts, isn't made by the critics or the commentators on the sidelines. It's made by the people who actually get in the arena, the ones who have skin in the game, and who are willing to risk failure for something they truly believe in. So, what do we do with all this? How do we actually honor these people from the past? Bregman argues that real gratitude isn't just passive appreciation, it's active imitation. It means taking the same ambition, taking their playbook, and applying it to the massive challenges of our own time. So if we were to create a true radical program for the 21st century, what might that even look like? Well, here are some of the big ideas on the table. First, a tax system that is fundamentally fair, one that stops punishing work more than it punishes wealth. Second, an active government that acts like a bold investor in the future. Think green energy, not just a passive referee. Third, smart deregulation. Now, this doesn't mean gutting protections, but clearing the bureaucratic sludge that stops us from building things we desperately need, like affordable housing. And finally, a massive reinvestment in the public goods that make life better for everyone. Let's just zero in on that tax idea for a second because it's so fundamental. For decades now, our system has taxed the money you earn from work way more heavily than the money you get from just owning stuff. As you can see, a fairer system is in principle really simple. Treat wealth and work the same. And while we're at it, make sure global corporations pay their fair share with a global minimum tax. Of course, the first question that always comes up is, okay, but how do we pay for all this? And the argument here is that this is fundamentally the wrong question to ask. The real obstacle isn't a lack of money, it's a lack of imagination. It's this powerful illusion that we can't afford a better world, when the truth is, it's often way cheaper to solve a problem like poverty than it is to just manage its consequences forever. And that brings us to our last big topic. And honestly, it might be the biggest challenge of all. As we're standing right on the edge of an AI revolution, we have to make some really tough decisions about what truly matters. What parts of our humanity are we going to fight to protect? You know, to really get a grip on the fight that's coming, it helps to look back. In the 19th century, the alcohol industry literally profited from social decay and addiction, and that sparked a massive democratic backlash, the temperance movement. Well, today we have a new industry of apps and algorithms that profits from hijacking our attention, and you can feel it starting to awaken a similar kind of public anger. So what's the antidote to all of this? What's the virtue we need to cultivate for the future? Well, it's something called moral ambition. It's a fundamental shift away from the endless chase for status, wealth, and fame, and towards a different kind of ambition. An ambition for integrity, for courage, and for public service. And that really is the final, most important thing to hold on to. Yes, we live in a time of monsters, but it's precisely in these moments of crisis that the world becomes unusually malleable. The rules become flexible. History is not yet written. The future is not some fixed destination we're heading towards. So we're left with this one big question. The old world might be dying, but a new one is struggling to be born. The iron of history is hot. The choices we make right now, big and small, will shape everything that comes next. So what are we going to build?